Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. I'm Rose Pancunas, founder and CEO of Sudozi. We help automate FP&A, and we also bring you an amazing finance guest every Friday to learn a little bit more about finance and the businesses that they're in. This week, we're excited to welcome Sam Sharma from Toast. Welcome, Sam.
Hey Rose, thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. We're very excited to chat with you about your journey in a couple different career paths and leading up to this sort of GM COO role here at xtraCHEF. But before we get to that, let's go back to the earlier days. Share a little bit about your journey in consulting and at HP before we got to meet at Uber.
Yeah, for sure. So I've actually moved around quite a bit in my career to where I am right now. My early days were actually just before consulting. I actually started my own web solutions company with my friends at college, and our idea was that we should try to scale and bring these offline businesses online. And we did that for a couple of years. It was good. I learned a lot, but I thought I wasn't ready to scale a business, and I really needed some real world experience to see how businesses scale. So that's why I was like, let's try out this thing called consulting, because you get to learn
See
how things
everything.
work. Yeah, so that was the context of consulting. And when I went into consulting, my first project was market opportunity assessment of cactus industry in South America. I was like, oh, interesting. Because I was thinking that coming from like a tech background, it would be more like tech centric clients. But that was like basically a good primer for what my next 4 years in consulting looked like, because I worked in all sorts of industry verticals, different projects, different teams. And I loved the experience. It was just fast paced. At the time, when you're like at 2 a.m. working on a deck, you don't love it. But like when I reflect back, it was just a very transformative
Get
experience.
thrown in.
Yeah, it just
Yeah.
defined me, because like it set the mentality that no deadline is impossible, right? So like you get stuff done. And as part of that experience, I spent a couple of years in Africa, South Africa and Kenya, working again on all sorts of like different projects, railways, minings, infrastructure. And that really set the tone of like really understanding what businesses go through. But at the same time, there was a void where like you're given recommendations but you don't really know what happens with those recommendations.
Hmm.
uh, that's when I thought that maybe it's a good time for me to explore going into an industry vertical. And as a stepping stone, I thought, let's just go and get my MBA done in the US. And that's where I came to the US, start math, good experience. And that's when I joined HP. And my transition into finance was more of a function of a situation than my deliberate attempt. So I did my internship at HP.
As many career paths
Yeah, it was.
wind up being.
Yeah, so I worked in internship and I love the team that I worked with. And when it came to like a full-time offer one year down the line, HP was splitting into two Fortune 50 companies.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
team that I was working in was tasked to work on GTM finance for that split. Okay. So not that I thought I would be in finance, but I moved into that team as part of my role, which was just like an extension of my internship. And now the role was different, where we had to think about like how to split these two companies
Yeah.
and what is going to be the coverage model for your GTM model for HP Inc. versus HP Enterprises. And it was like interesting, fascinating, because there was like a deadline to it. This is when we are splitting. So all of this needs to happen before that. So I enjoyed that experience, but I still felt that I can do a lot more in terms of being in a fast-paced environment, and that's when I found the opportunity at Toast under your team, Rose. So that was a fantastic just switch and working through that opportunity. So those were like that's the path that led me.
Yeah. Yeah. Super interesting. Yeah. So you've been doing these like project based roles, and even at HP, it was kind of a project based role because you had the very specific deadline.
Yeah,
And then at Uber, you joined, got thrown into Uber pool. Like, hey Sam, we launched this product. We're not sure about the economics or how these things work. Go work on this. And then you actually wound up doing more of a corporate finance role as you became more senior there. So maybe share a little bit about that journey and how what was that last role you had before you transitioned to Toast.
yeah, for sure. So Uber pool was fascinating because actually the first Uber ride I took was a pool ride. So when I found out that I'm interviewing for the pool role, I was interested because I generally liked that product It was just like fantastic idea. Okay. And in one sense, I was also fortunate that it was top of mind for the leadership, because the leadership
Yeah.
did want to expand it. Now, even though I think it was, when I joined, it was in a couple of cities and like a very primitive idea, but it was top of mind for the leadership. So as I worked on that role, it did make me get into that pool of just like everyone is focused on it, and it brought additional opportunities for me at Toast, right? It was, I would definitely say the first few months for me at Uber were challenging. It's just like the sheer pace. Now I was used to fast pace, but the sheer pace and just
And
like
this Google Sheet thing that we were in.
exactly, right? So that was fascinating. But as I worked on that opportunity and we did well, we expanded internationally, we expanded into multiple cities. I just got exposed to more opportunities because I was working on this, right? So just like from Uber Pool, working on um, the incentive structure for drivers for our top cities in the US, and then transitioning that, what we almost created a product to the product team, and then leading the broader product finance org for our rides business. And then from there, I transitioned to the Eats ecosystem. And within Eats, first I took on the role of managing finance, all the global finance functions like corporate finance, sales finance, something called marketing finance, right? So all those functions for Eats. And then my last role within Uber was leading the US and Canada Uber Eats finance function. So within Uber also, I just like, there were different roles that and
Hmm.
opportunities
Hmm.
that kept opening up, and I was receptive to just like grabbing those opportunities and running with them. So my 4.5 years at Uber was just a combination of multiple roles and very interesting people, and I just loved the experience there.
Yeah. And for many people listening, I mean, I'm sure they either made a recent career transition or they're thinking about making a career transition. Seems like you were doing very well at Uber Eats in that finance role. You know, what were some of the drivers for you to take that opportunity at Toast?
So it's interesting. I tell to even my team right now, it's like every couple of years, just like assess your market value, right? It doesn't mean that you're not happy. It's good to just
Hmm.
like test
Hmm.
out the waters, like where the gaps in your career are. And I did that. I've done that. And I tell my team right now, even my direct reports, to actually
Yeah.
just try that, right? Like you understand where things are. So as part of that, I was like, I was happy at Uber Eats. I was growing well within Uber. But given that I was in this ecosystem, I had a hypothesis in my mind, okay, that POS providers would be a very valuable sector here. And I was thinking that
Hmm.
like a Series B POS provider would be like a very good opportunity. And if I had money, I would put that money there, because I thought that like a POS provider who can have the mind share of the restaurants would be very valuable. And I was thinking like Series B or Series C, because I thought that one of these delivery companies would acquire them, right? So it's a good opportunity area, and that's where like at that time our BD team was also interacting with different POS providers, just because it
Yeah.
improves like the seamless
Yeah.
operations of delivery
Totally.
providers. It improves. So we were talking to a bunch of POS providers, and that's when I came across the name of Toast, and hearing from the BD team that this company is doing really well, and it's in the SMB sector, like the sector that we really want to attract to. And like they spoke very positively of Toast, and that's where like it registered in my mind. And then when someone from Toast just reached out, and the opportunity, by the way, was in Boston. I was in San Francisco, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it was like, I've heard of this company. I have this hypothesis in my mind, right?
Yeah.
I should engage. So when I started talking to the company, I just like love the people, the founders, the CEO, just like the entire set of people. That's like the most important factor, how well you click with the group. Just worked out. And one of the other things that I had was like, if I move within a finance role outside of Toast, outside of Uber, I would move in a company where like the company is transitioning from like, we want to improve our unit economics and end up becoming profitable. Because I've always felt that as a finance person, you have more of a seat at the table if the company is going through that transition or wants to.
Hmm. Hmm.
That was my like, the company that I want
Yeah.
to go in like should be going through the journey, versus like I didn't feel super pumped into like joining like say a self-driving autonomous vehicle startup and doing finance there, where like, okay, get the books done and then do it for the next.
Right. Right. Right.
That's where like these things worked out. And and I joined the opportunity at Toast. So
Nice.
as head of strategic finance, so that was the transition from Uber to Toast.
Yeah. And in that finance role, I'm sure you've done a number of strategic finance roles as well as, more traditional FP&A processes, structures. So, doing that for a few years and then this GM opportunity comes up. Now, maybe share a little bit about what that interaction was like and how you ultimately ended up in this current role.
So this was also just because I was in that role, this opportunity came up, right? Because I've always felt as strategic finance, you should more be like a business leader who's helping set the direction of the company versus just like I'll I'll help you think through the numbers, right? So as I was doing that, I was also involved in this like M&A flow of us thinking through what are the right opportunities for us to enter into as Toast as a company. And one of the opportunities that came up was xtraCHEF, right?
Mm-hmm.
Chef really helps to simplify the back office for restaurants, right? And we thought that's like a really good entry point for Toast to enter into and then expand. Because I was involved in that flow and building through the value proposition of why that opportunity is attractive, and then working through just like the deal economics for that,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's where and I'd expressed my interest to one of the founders that I would love to do something more and take on a more of a GM and a business leader opportunity. While I was doing this, he was like, by the way, this sounds like a great opportunity for you to enter into this role and be there from like day zero, right? And there's a lot more work that needs to be done, just
Mm-hmm.
in terms of like first integrating the companies and then scaling the companies and then playing out the hypothesis that we've had for acquiring this company. So that's
Yeah.
where,
Yeah.
and I was like, yes, let's do it, right? Because is and so that was the transition from moving from finance to this GM role.
Yeah. And so once you've got your HRIS, title changed and some of those official documentations and emails sent over like, hey, Sam is now GM of this, xtraCHEF, this new business line. What were your first few weeks like, transitioning from really like analytics, P&L management, maybe cost savings to growing this business?
First, yeah, the first few weeks were I had just two missions for not the first few weeks, but for the first 6 months. One was to learn about the business, right? So just like get into the nitty and gritty of how this business works. What is the product like? What are the teams
Yeah.
like? And my core goal was to bring the team along with me, right? The team that is getting acquired. So the first few months was just like, what is the product? How can we make sure that the team is integrated? How do we make sure that the GTM function, our sales team can start selling this, our sales teams knows what are the value propositions,
Right.
right?
Right.
We know where the debt is
The
in
marketing assets are merged too.
marketing. How do we merge them? How do we bring the teams together, right? Like what are the right reporting structures within the org, right? uh, so that was honestly my only goal for the first 6 months, is I want to make sure that the team that comes in feels that
Right.
part of
Right.
it. That was like the most important goal for me, and then for me to personally know about the product, so that when I go and talk about the product, I can be the biggest proponent of this, right? Because I was the biggest proponent of the idea and how do we scale it,
Yeah.
not of
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
existing product, right? So I had to understand
Yeah.
that to gain the trust of the team that was coming in. So
Yeah.
those were the first 6 months of the role, honestly.
Yeah. And so this role obviously, you clearly worked hard, did well at Toast. Opportunity came up for someone who may not have this like direct acquisition opportunity, maybe looking elsewhere. What would you have done if you were looking to transition more directly into a GM role?
I would say that the first thing, my personal advice would be, if you're transitioning or making that big of a jump, look at the opportunities around you, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Versus attacking this in an external environment where you might be known,
Mm-hmm.
because you have built the credibility with the people around you, either in your network or in that particular organization, that can say that, okay, I trust XYZ or Sam
Yeah.
to do it,
Yeah.
right? Like someone has to trust you to say that you'll make that jump, right? So
Yeah.
it's important that you think about your own network and within the organization, and it might not be an external opportunity like in terms of an acquisition, but there are opportunities that open up within our organization, in our networks, right? by the way, Sam, I know that something like this is available. So first thing is like,
Yeah.
let the network know that you are interested in something, because people wouldn't make that connection. You would have to help people make that connection for you. So that's where just like the staying close to your network is part of this transition,
Right.
right? Like
Right.
within the company and outside the company, uh, the connections that you've made in like series of jobs, it's good to stick around with those.
Yeah. And stay top of mind when an opportunity
And
does come up.
stay top of mind. I personally think that the work connections that you make are stronger than say the connections that you'll make in in an educational institute, right? Because they cannot speak to the quality of work that you will produce.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Work,
Mm-hmm.
you know that like I know this person will get stuff done, right? So that's where like making sure that you have that core network is an important part of how you make such transition, or honestly how you grow in your career also.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Awesome. Well, like this has gone so super quickly. I think we could talk for a number of hours, minutes on a couple different things. So before we wrap up here, if you reflect on your experiences and what's expected of you in your role today, what's one thing earlier in your career you would have spent more time on?
I think it's early in your career, it's super important to be just like have that hunger for learning. I don't know the stuff. Let me just go deep and learn that stuff. Because breadth early in your career is valuable. And as you go in your career, depth becomes very important, right? So uh, I did some of that, but I could have done a lot more. And I would just say, like, someone early in their
Mm-hmm.
career, like, just push on learning. Like, I need to learn stuff. Like, even in my finance role, I would say now that I'm in the other side of the world and I have like product and engineering teams working for me, I felt that I didn't really get into the nitty gritties of
Mm-hmm.
how do the engineers really work, right? In the finance
Mm-hmm.
organization. So I've generally felt like finance as an organization has less empathy for R&D as compared to GTM or marketing, because they understand more of that world. Whereas for
Yeah.
R&D, like how do you measure performance? How do you measure productivity? It's just like let them figure out and let them tell us like what's the right metric.
Yeah.
So that's where like building that understanding of the people that you're working with, your ecosystem, having that super hunger for learning helps you early in your career.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
All right. Last thing. What's one fun fact about Sam, Extra Chef, Toast? Something you'd like to share?
Fun fact. I was asking my wife what's the fun fact about me. She couldn't come up with anything. That's that. No, just joking. But I've been fun fact. I have a 4.5 year old daughter, and I've been calling her with like a different name every time I talk to her. And the interesting part is that she always knows that I'm calling her, even though I'm using it. That's interesting.
That connectivity. Well, thanks for sharing that, Sam. Well, Sam, thank you so much for spending time with us here today, and best of luck with everything with Extra Chef and at Toast.
Thank you so much, Rose. I really enjoyed the conversation.
All right. Have a good one.